Good morning, and thanks for joining us today for our webinar where we'll be discussing disability income insurance. A couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. We invite questions from our audience. Please enter your questions into the chat box, and we will be able to address those at the end of the presentation. I'm joined today by our Deputy Commissioner, Keith Nyan, and I'd like to turn it over to Keith now for some introductory comments.
Thank you very much, Andrew. We're here today to talk about an important insurance product, disability income insurance. And, a little bit different from the types of products that we typically highlight during our webinar series, which is, we're all familiar with health insurance, automobile insurance, and home insurance. But disability income insurance is an important product that, provides peace of mind to individuals, when they find themselves, frankly, out of work. On that note, I'd like to turn it over to our subject matter experts, Maureen Brooks and Shannon Wright, to talk to you about the importance of this product and to take your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Keith.
I'm Shannon Wright.
And I'm Maureen Brooks. And here's just a quick overview of what we're going to be chatting about today with disability income insurance. So we're going to look at what it is as a product, what are the eligibility requirements to file a claim, like what would make you eligible for that benefit. Is it worth it? Is buying into that product going to be beneficial for you? Tips for filing and managing a claim, and then we'll take any questions that you may have.
Okay, so let's talk about what is disability income insurance. It is an insurance product that can be obtained through your employer, through a benefit package, or some people can purchase it privately, individually. Our conversation is going to be focused primarily on the employer-sponsored benefits that you get through your benefit plan.
And is this different from Social Security disability income or New Hampshire paid family leave? How do those work?
It is. So Social Security disability benefits is part of the federal program of the Social Security income bracket. That is something that you would apply for through your Social Security office, regional office. And then the New Hampshire paid family and medical leave benefits, the New Hampshire PFML, if you hear that acronym, that is a benefit that is through the state. It's private. MetLife actually manages it for the state. And if you are following along and you can see the screen, you'll see that there is a link there to the site if you would like more information about that.
Perfect. So it sounds like they're similar things that may kind of co-occur, but what we're talking about is different from those two things.
Correct. So those are state and federal programs. This particular disability income we're talking about is something that your employer offers as a benefit that they contract with insurance carriers.
Awesome. So how would I even know that I'm eligible to file a claim? Like what?
So the eligibility requirements, the main one is meeting that definition of disability, which is in your plan or policy. And typically that definition is basically if you are injured or suffer a sickness that prevents you from performing your job or occupation as you're qualified to do based on your education and your training and your work experience.
What's the difference between a job and an occupation? Because they sound kind of the same to me.
So your job is typically how you perform it for your employer. And then your occupation could be something that is how it's performed in the national economy. And so a good example of that is a good field for an example is nursing. So you could be a trauma nurse, which is very physically demanding. And that job that you do at that hospital as a trauma nurse, you're standing for immense periods of time. It's physically intensive. You're lifting patients. And so how that job is performed is what we would consider a heavy occupation. Now, in the realm of nursing, there are other jobs, such as a telephonic triage nurse. And that job is sedentary. You're sitting primarily, you're on the phone, you're typing a lot. Vastly different, but both nursing.
Okay, so it sounds like occupation is like the bigger category
Yes,
that encompasses smaller jobs that might have varying requirements.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So does that depend on, so if I have a short-term disability claim, what does that entail? Is that what's short-term?
So typically employers offer two types of disability income benefits. One is short-term disability and one is long-term. And the short-term disability benefit primarily focuses on your job as you perform it for your employer. So that is that triage or that trauma nurse, working her job at the hospital.
Gotcha.
And that benefit usually runs 3 to 6 months.
Okay. And then after that, is that what's considered long-term?
Long-term disability usually kicks in after that 3 to 6 month period. And the evaluation at that point almost always is looking at your occupation as it's performed in the national economy. So
Okay.
that's when they're looking at, taking nursing as an example again, they're looking at you're a registered nurse. You may not be able to do that physically demanding job as a trauma nurse, but you could possibly perform that job as a telephonic triage nurse.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so but do I have to pay premiums, and is it even worth it to pay for that if I may not need it? How does that work out for me?
So yes, there are premiums. Maybe we should move to the next
That-
to the next whether it's worth it. So disability benefits, they're calculated based on your gross base weekly or monthly income. They're always a percentage of your income that comes in, whether it's weekly or monthly. And that generally runs 40 to 60% of your earnings. And when we say 40 to 60%, that's generally more often your long term. The short term disability is usually a more generous benefit because it's a shorter duration and the employer is expecting you to return back to work pretty timely. But the the long term tends to run the range of the 40 to 60% of your base earnings. In addition to that, a lot of employers will offer a buy-up, um, which is an additional coverage, typically between 10 to 15% additionally. And as a former case manager, I would recommend that you buy the buy-up. I would recommend that you get all the short term and the long term and the buy-up because some income is better than no income when you're out, whether due to illness or an injury. So having that income protection really is beneficial to you, your family. So I would recommend it. And also, if at all possible, enroll when you first are hired in
Okay.
all those coverages. Because if you decide, okay, I'll get the short term and I'll get the long term, but I'm not going to buy the buy up when you're first hired, but then you decide maybe a year or two later, like all of a sudden in the coming year you're going to have a major surgery that's going to take you out of work for a period of time, and you want to get that buy up then.
Yeah.
It's going to be subject to an additional eligibility review that may mean that you won't be eligible for that buy-up coverage when you need it. So enroll when you can initially.
Hey, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So I've bought all this product, I've paid for the buy-ups, and now I broke my leg. What do I do? You said you were a case manager. I also was a case manager, although I'm playing the question asker here. But
Yeah.
what are some of the tips that you would have for like filing or managing a claim?
So the first thing would be contact your HR rep, get a copy of your plan or your policy document and review it. Find out what the requirements are for you to be eligible, what that definition of disability looks like for you, how they define the disability, how they calculate your benefit, what that benefit percentage is. Because the calculation of the benefit, it may be weekly, it may pay out weekly, it may pay out biweekly, it may pay out monthly. Those are the things you're going to want to know because it affects how you budget. Everyone has a budget, I assume, for their household. So, those are things that knowledge is power to know. It will also tell you in the planner policy if there are any limitations that you should be aware of. So that would be the first
Yeah.
step.
And I know that we've probably heard us say generally, typically,
Yes.
frequently in
Yeah.
this conversation. That's why it's so important to look at your plan document, your policy document, because when a claim is being administered, they are following the letter of that document,
Yep.
and yours may be different or may have special, um, like I said, limitations, clauses. Your benefit might only be calculated from your base salary and not include overtime. There are many variances, so having that document and understanding it will make sure that you're informed about the coverage that you have.
Exactly.
And so then when I've filed my claim, now I'm knowledgeable about my policy. What else is helpful to know? Like, how do I, that seems like a lot of work.
It is, but there's a certain responsibility onus on you as the person filing the claim to make sure that that your case manager has what they need. Your case manager, the next step once your claim is filed, and your HR representative will usually typically helps you with that filing of the claim with the insurance carrier. The case manager's next steps is they're going to be contacting you. Make sure you're available. Make sure you provide them as much information as possible. They're also going to be obtaining copies of your medical records from your providers. This is where there's usually the biggest roadblock for insurance carriers and your case manager is trying to get copies of your medical records. It sounds like it should be simple and straightforward, but oftentimes it is not. So we recommend from our experience as case managers that you obtain and keep copies of all your relevant medical records so that in the event that your case manager is having difficulty obtaining them, you can provide a copy to them. It's also good for you for knowing your own medical record and having that copy for your records as well. So that would be the first. That would be the first step. The next would be when you meet with your providers, when you meet with your specialists, make sure you're having clear conversations with them and letting them know what your symptoms are and how they're impacting your inability to work. Your primary care physician may be familiar with you and know what you do for a living, but if you're having to see specialists, they're not going to know what you do. So if you're a plumber and you're out of work for a severe back injury, say to your L4, L5, and your job's physically demanding, you're not going to be able to bend and stoop and lift as you normally would, as required for a plumber, if you have such a severe back injury. So it's important the specialists know what you do for work so that they can clearly document why these symptoms or why this injury really is going to prevent you from working. So that would be one other recommendation. And then the next, I touched on it earlier, was making sure you have that clear line of communication with your case manager. And that's a two-way conversation.
Absolutely.
They're going to ask you a lot of questions. They're going to want a lot of information from you, but make sure you're asking them questions as well. So you have a clear understanding of what information they're looking for, when it is needed by, and why they need it. So make sure you're active in that conversation with them at all times.
Yeah, remember that your case manager is having these conversations every day over and over and over and may leave out details unintentionally that would help you better understand things because they're sort of used to just spewing out the quick facts. So if you don't understand or you have a question, ask. They will be able to give more information or go get an answer for you. But it's always good to be clear if you have any concerns or questions.
And I know that the push these days is to use technology to text and to email, but sometimes it's really good to pick up the phone. And if you can have that phone call conversation with your case manager, you develop a rapport with your case manager at that point and a good working relationship. Email and text is sterile. You don't get to develop a conversation with them, but through the phone you can. So I would recommend that. And along those lines of communication, the final step would be make sure you're maintaining consistent communication with your employer. That could be with your HR rep or directly with your manager or both, but make sure that they are in the loop of what's going on with you, your treatment, your claim, how long that the expectation for you to be out of work is, and how you're progressing because medically, because there are typically provisions within your plan or policy that allow for a partial return to work where you're going to get paid, your actual work earnings as well as a disability benefit, or you could return to work for a period of time in a modified position that would allow you to return to work full time with full earnings, which, as a reminder, as case managers, the goal of your case manager is to see you get back to work successfully, if at all possible. And so utilizing those tools of partial disability or a modified return to work is extremely beneficial because your full earnings is always better than a partial benefit that you're receiving from disability. Because remember, it is a percentage of your income and it is not your full income when you're out on disability.
Sounds like a good tip to me. I'd much rather get 100% than 40.
Oh yeah, me too.
After all of that, we kind of covered the basics. Are there any questions that anyone had that came through? I know that we used generally, typically, very often, but is there anything that we could answer?
We're not seeing any so far. We certainly invite folks to email us their questions later, and the contact info is there, consumerservices@ins.nh.gov. And our consumer page on our website has a lot of other information, and of course our contact info for folks to reach us at any time. Stay tuned for our next month's webinar, where we will be discussing, let's see here, industry-focused topic, surplus lines with property and casualty and financial regulation subject matter experts. So any closing thoughts, ladies?
If you can, enroll in the benefits.
Yeah.
They're worthwhile long-term.
It's worthwhile to do it right away.
Yeah.
To make sure you don't have any of those like further, eligibility reviews.
Yeah.
And just being absolutely on top of the timelines that are expected of you and your doctors as far as when records or any other documentation is required. That will help you.
You are your best advocate.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate your expertise very much, and we appreciate everyone joining us. You can see this and all of our webinars on our YouTube page, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone on next month's webinar. Thank you.